All right. How's everybody doing today? Damon is not here today, but I'm glad to be joined by Drake Porter, former Syracuse alum and coach with Goalie Smith, as well as Simon Bellamy, who's the former goalie at Brock University, national champion up here in Canada this past year, and coach with Stand Tall Goaltending. And we're going to be reviewing the brand new East Coast Dyes Impact goalie head. Now, Drake, you were heavily involved in the development of this head. So I was wondering if maybe you could touch on sort of how it all started, what was the thought process around kind of how this head was developed, and then maybe we can touch on, that initial performance of the head.
Yeah, so I was sort of involved a little bit. So I moved to Towson last year, which is where the East Coast Dyes headquarters are located, and obviously East Coast Dyes, they wanted to sort of collaborate with Goalie Smith to help test the head and then eventually bring it to market. So I know Mike Gavosden, my boss and one of the co-founders of Goalie Smith, was super involved in the original development of the head. So the design, what are we looking for? What are the priorities? And I know like the biggest things that he wanted were stiffness, especially at the top of the head, so that when you feel like you got a piece of the ball, like it doesn't just go in every time. Sort of throat design that was comfortable, but also held the stick in the right spot in your hand. And then how light the head was. And I know they wanted to pair it with a new mesh where they felt like it was sort of their best goalie mesh. And then when I came in, a lot of what I had to do with was just sort of testing it through at a high level. So they would have me take shots at East Coast Dyes with different iterations of the head. They were still in development. And then I used it last fall for the US Lacrosse Fall Classic and against USA and Virginia. And then the next weekend at the Sixes, where it got really tested against Iroquois and USA. And I've sort of just been using it through. I used it at training camp and then used it this past week down in Alabama after it finally did get released. So I've sort of seen it as they tried out different plastics and different molds and slightly different face shape designs. And my boss, Mike, had a lot to do with sort of the initial design of it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the performance of this head. One of the big key selling features is its lightweight feel and performance. And the second that you get this head in your hands, like that was one of the first things that really stood out to me, was how light it is and sort of the work that's been done to create spaces in the head to make it lightweight. Simon, maybe could you touch on sort of your initial thoughts and feel with once you got the stick in your hand?
Yeah, so right away, like I've been an avid like Eclipse 2 user for the majority of my career. And so picking up a new head, like I was a little bit skeptical, but as far as lightness goes, like it is incredibly light. What really blew me away with this head is the face shape. I think that it's, like lacrosse at the high level is like a game of millimeters. And if you're able to produce a head that is slightly larger or takes up more surface area while also remaining lightweight, that's a winning combination right there. I've been out several times with this head getting shots from some of the guys in St. Catharines, and especially on low shots, I'm noticing that I'm getting there just like a half second earlier, and I feel like it's because it's got that wider width to it. So yeah, as far as weight goes, I'm impressed that they were able to create not only a stiffer head but a larger surface area head that still like competes with the other top heads as far as weight.
Yeah, and Drake, what were sort of your initial thoughts when you got this head in your hands and how you sort of saw it evolve to what it is now? What were sort of initial thoughts on performance and the weight when it came to this head?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for me, and I was like a loyal Eclipse 2 guy my entire career. And this isn't like ripping on STX Eclipse. I'll just preface everything I say with that. I'm not paid by East Coast Dyes, so this is just all something I've kind of helped out with. But with the Eclipse too, like in college, in the dome, it would get pretty like warm. So I would actually like I would go through a few heads a season, like 4 or 5. And it was always, all I cared about was just like the stiffness up top. Because I felt like I had a shot that I should have saved where the ball hits the plastic and goes in. I would get frustrated and I would go get like a new head strung up. So that was like the number one thing I really went into East Coast Eyes when I was testing it out. I really went in was, you know, when that ball hits the top, is it just bending back and going in? And what I noticed a lot of times is it was like maybe it bent a little bit, but it would pop forward or pop up instead of going all the way back. So that was like my first thought. And then the second thing was just comfort. So I was the same way. I was so loyal to the Eclipse 2. I don't think I ever tried a shield. You know, if I did, I hated it. If I tried the Nike, I hated it because the feel was just so much different. And, you know, I would use it for like 20 seconds and then put it back down. Same with the Warrior. And not saying that those are bad heads. It was just, to me, I was so uncomfortable because I had used something else for so long. And then this head, when I put it in my hands, I didn't really have that feeling. I felt pretty similar, just like in terms of weight and just like comfort, you know, to what I had used my entire career. And I think the throat too, especially. So I was able to kind of hop in and forget that I was using, you know, a different head in terms of feel, like right away, which was like obviously really important to me. I wasn't just like uncomfortable right away, which is why I ended up using it, you know, when I got to sort of really important parts of like what I was trying to do with Canada and then, you know, PLL training camp. So that was, you know, I wouldn't have used the head if I didn't really, really like it. And I ended up being more comfortable with it after using it for a while. So
it's interesting you talk about like the scoop kind of bend with the Eclipse, because I remember back, it would have been the 2020 national championship or 2021 national championship with Virginia and Maryland, and there was a video of or a clip that went around of Alex Rode making trying to make a save, and just it hit the top of the head and went in for a goal. So that was definitely something that I think is really awesome that came into the development of his head is the strength of the top of the head. But one of the other things that I wanted to touch on was the scoop. So it's kind of a flatter scoop compared to the Eclipse, which I have here. That's more of like an offset to its scoop. And then I don't have a Mark IIG, but it has more of a forward scoop on it. Maybe one of you can kind of touch on sort of what you felt in terms of a difference when it came to using this head with that flatter scoop. Did you find it you had to sort of change your throwing mechanics at all, or things along those lines? Maybe Simon, you can start first.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with what Drake said. Like going from the Eclipse 2 to this head, you almost expect it to be a transition, but it wasn't. It was immediately comfortable. But the one thing that I did have to figure out was the offset. Right. So as you can see, like it's very straight, whereas the Eclipse leans back. So I felt like the first like couple times I was out there, lob touch passes were like perfect. But if I did want to put a little like oomph on the ball, I found that it wasn't necessarily hooking. It was just going lower than I expected it to go because it was being released later, right? Because the head wasn't as lean back. That being said, it's an easy adjustment, and like I find that I throw fine with it now. But that, as far as the comfortability goes, transitioning to one head to another, that was the most noticeable difference I found between the Eclipse. However, it has other benefits, right? Right away, like Drake talked about, you know, getting a piece and going in. I feel like that has to do with stiffness, but it also has to do with the angle of the scoop, right? So, you know, as small as we're talking here, you see how the lip here is angled forward. On the Eclipse, it's angled backwards. So, like he said, when you get a piece of it, it's more likely to deflect outwards or upwards as opposed ramping off the head and going back in.
Yeah, I think too with the I actually noticed that as well when I was first throwing with the head. A lot of it, in the 20-yard ECD turf, like I was just kind of flicking it back to guys, and then when I got out, I had to adjust a little bit my throwing motion, especially on the more zippy kind of long passes. But like you said, I made the adjustment. So, but that was like one difference I sort of noticed. And now I feel more comfortable throwing with this than I do anything else. And then I think with the Mark 2G, like the String King head, I think that's another one where it's so unique. And that was one where the first time I tried it, I put it down because I was just like, I can't throw with that because it was so much different for me, and I wasn't really comfortable with it right away. And as an older guy, I'm kind of just like stuck in my ways, and that was one of the ones where like I was like, I'm just gonna use the Eclipse. Like this is freaking me out a little bit, for better or worse. But I didn't really notice that as much with this one. And I think too with you're saying with the angle, I think that was sort of one of the things I noticed consistently was the ball popping up or out instead of like pulling back into the goal. And that was one of my favorite things about it. I told them like even on the first day. So yeah, I agree with what you were saying there.
Yeah, and I did want to touch on like kind of the divoting that was done at the top of the scoop here. Did that like bother you guys at all? Like I assume that this was done to kind of take weight out of the head. But do you guys notice that at all with like scooping ground balls or when you're passing or things like that, like bugging you at all? Okay.
No, I didn't really notice it.
All right. I was just curious about that because it's got kind of this weird sort of lip design. So I wondered if that would um, hurt you guys at all. And then the stringing piece of it. So, when it comes to an East Coast Dides head, there's always like, it's built for stringers. And there's tons of stringing holes on this. Simon, I know you're quite the stringer. Drake, I don't know how much of a stringer you are, but what was sort of your thoughts when it came to like stringing this head, Simon?
Yeah, I was pretty fired up to say the least. Like you grab any new head and you expect it to be like a bit of a Rubik's Cube when you're stringing, right? You don't really know how it's going to, shape the pocket, shape the channel. But the girl, I picked one up at Lacrosse Unlimited down North Carolina, and the girl, like the first thing she said to me is, "Oh, it's a blast to string." And I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting comment." Like usually people try to sell you on the weight or the stiffness and stuff. And so it's got the same, in my opinion, it's got the same sidewall holes and top string setup as an Eclipse too. Like as you can see, the top string holes here run clean into the sidewall holes. There's not a lot of like gap there. It also has 9 top string holes, which is the same as the Eclipse too. But somehow they've made it much more easy to string. And I believe that is due to the face shape. I think that having a rounder face shape, it's easier to create, right? A nice pocket with a nice channel. I don't know about you, Drake, but I don't like when my channel gets like this. I find that it grips the ball too much if you have a tight little channel. So I kind of like this, right? A bit of a wider channel. And I find that's very difficult to get on the Nemis and on the Eclipses. But this, it was, it came out pretty easy. I found the head left, there's a lot of room for combination in the top sidewall, right? So like Evan, like if you look at yours, right, it looked like yours was skip a hole, 1 knot, skip a hole, 1 knot, skip a hole.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas mine, I skipped 1, then I skipped, then I got 2, right? So I create a bit of a higher pocket for myself, skip 1, another one, skip 1, right? And then just rattle them off down here to create that pocket. And as I was stringing it, I was trying different combinations, and pretty much every combination that I put in created something that could throw and that could control rebounds. It's just a matter of personal preference.
Awesome. Yeah. Drake, did you have anything to touch on with the stringing aspect of it or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really string heads, but I'm more of a tight channel guy, so mine looks more like that. And I think one thing that when I went in, they were giving me a few things to try, and I think they released that was pre-strung, which I think is like pretty important, especially with some of the goalie sticks I've seen come through. where I'm like, the kid can't throw an outlet pass and his coach is telling him he sucks. And I'm like, it really is just your stick. Like you've been throwing with, a pretty bad stick for years. And it can really kind of hinder someone's career. Because then you get clearing issues that take a while to go away, even if you do get a good stick. So I think for them, the pre-strung pocket was important and something I tried to help with. I know that one is more, so this sits a little bit higher, not quite as high as Simon's, but the pocket sits about there. Just allows, I think, because there's less tightness up top, allows for a quicker release when I throw, and like controls rebounds a little bit better, because when the channel sits super low, it can end up really tight up here. And then you get a little bit of that tennis racket. So I think they ended up releasing not this pocket. Their channel sits a little bit lower. And it just allows for like really easy throwing motion and like really easy throwing mechanics. So it doesn't, you're not like getting screwed over by your head. And then I think they were talking about potentially putting out like more of like a pro or like higher level pocket where the channel sits a little higher. So I just know that was their plans for that. And I know my roommate who strings my stick said it was really easy to adjust when I would ask him for, okay, can you move this around, when I was first kind of using the head. And he's a stringer, so it ended up working out pretty well, and he had a pretty easy time with it. But yeah,
that's one of the things that I like about this head and what it offers, is that like on the East Coast Dice website, you can do like your own custom design head, which not many other companies really do that. So you can customize it with like the mesh you want, the type of color of sidewalls or shooting strings. You can do all of that when it comes to this head. And I think it's a really cool, awesome feature that East Coast Dice offers that is pretty unique to what they do, which is a really cool option. And it's something that, especially for, someone like myself who I'm not a stringer, to be able to, give it to someone else. Like this was strung by Mr. Wonderful, which he did an awesome job with, and I love. But to have that option, if you don't have someone who can string sticks, you can get East Coast Dice to build it for you and send it off is really great as well. And then the last piece that I wanted to touch on with performance was that throat. Now, Drake, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what was sort of your thoughts around like the throat and the design of it, and how you find it helps you in terms of holding your stick?
Yeah, I think so when I first got it, it was one of the things that felt a little bit different. So the Eclipse runs straight. You can see that there's sort of some edges here at the top, and the Eclipse runs straight through and is a bit more smooth. And one thing I noticed is, yeah, exactly. And one thing I noticed is like it sort of locked these like edges here, kind of locked my hand in when I was holding my stick, because I hold it up closer to the throat. And then this way, like the edges would sort of dig into my glove, and then when a ball hit the side, rather than the head spinning in my hand, I was like catching a lot on my gloves, which was a big issue for me in college. And my coach would just joke that I didn't have enough wrist strength, which probably could have been true as well. But it would always piss me off when I got one, but it would spin my head, especially on like wet days, and it would go in. And then I noticed that really never happened with this head. It sort of just stayed completely locked in. And I realized that was because of these edges here. So when they were actually talking about with me and I guess with each other about potentially getting rid of them, I was like, actually, this is a huge piece that I really like, just because it stops the head from spinning in my hand. And I think that was another Final Four one. I think it was Colin Krieg. There was a clip of Virginia. He like fully made the save, but then his head spun in his hand in that wet Final Four semifinal. And I pulled up that clip, and again, I'm not ripping on STX or anything, but then that was something that I did like about this, was it sort of locked in to my hand. And I don't know if they've really advertised that as like being a feature of the head, but it's like probably my favorite parts of it, and why I kind of continue to use it.
Awesome. Simon, do you have any thoughts on the throat?
Yeah, so when I first started using this head, definitely the throat I was a bit uncomfortable with, just because it is a little bit wider at the top, and I grip my plastic all the way up, like I hold my head right up here. But like Drake said, I began to realize like although my hand isn't necessarily used to the shape and size, it does definitely get caught on your glove when you're getting shots to the side of the sidewall. But another thing This might be a bit like complicated to explain. I find that you can almost use these sharp edges here as, I guess, leverage to like increase the snap of your wrist, right? So especially on like low off stick hip, 5-hole, off stick high, saves where you have to turn your top hand a little bit, right? I find that having that increased grip, you can almost, as you're coming through, right? Let's say it's off hip, as you're coming through and you snap your wrist over, it almost like increases the speed at which you can do that because you have these edges to dig into.
No, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's just something that I've noticed, Drake. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about that, but it's definitely like, I mean, it's definitely true. It's something I've kind of like, I just feel more comfortable turning my, like that, like my hand. I didn't even realize that was why. So you're a smart guy.
There you go. So the next piece that I wanted to touch on was durability. Now, as we've talked about, this head was really built with the mindset of really trying to strengthen the top part of the head, the scoop of the head, and preventing that back bend that we see with the Eclipse 2. But one of the things we've kind of heard from people off the initial launch of this head was that they're experiencing warping at the side parts of the head. Drake, I was wondering if you could maybe sort of touch on where that might be coming from and why people might be experiencing that.
Yeah, I think, when they released the head, I think like the number one priority was sort of stiffness up top. And they sort of built it up so that, those ones that go off the top don't go in, because when they go off the side, it's not necessarily as big an issue. And I think, a big piece of making a head like this is how do we create it so it's stiff enough that you're not letting extra shots in, but not too stiff that it breaks after a week and you need to call in and get a recall and get a new one. So I think that's when they were looking at it, was how do we sort of strike that perfect balance. And I know that they tried out a ton of different plastics, and there were ones that, were super stiff. They were a little bit heavier, and then the stick would break sorry about my dog there. The stick would break when I was testing it out. So then I think that was when we they were looking at it. They ended up kind of finding a plastic they liked. And I know that the priority was always top stiffness, and they kind of got to that level, and then they got to the level where the stick wasn't breaking. So it was like, okay, we sort of found the perfect one. And I know that, like you were saying, like side to side wasn't really something they thought about as much. So, you see some Eclipses will warp and they'll end up all the way back here, especially for guys who dig their sticks into the ground a lot. Whereas this one isn't really bending here. I think now, because they've put so much into the top, it's going a little bit side to side, like you were saying. So I think, I definitely, there is some give and take there. And I've seen it a couple times with my head, and I'll just sort of like push it against the ground and like bend it back to get it to like line up straight again. And to me, it's not really something I think about, but if that is something that like really would bother someone, I think, yeah, that it is something that definitely happens in this head, especially in the summertime, which is when they released it, and what people are seeing now, where, heads I used to see void lights just completely fold. So yeah, just definitely something that's real there. And Simon, you could touch on what you've seen of it. But yeah.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the durability. Keep in mind, I haven't seen a fraction of the reps that, Drake has with this head. But I haven't seen any bend backwards. I let in one goal where it hit the top scoop and it bent backwards and went in, but I was shooting with Latrell Harris, who can, shoot the ball like 100 miles an hour standing still. So yeah, one went in off the scoop, big whoop. Where I was really like blown away with the durability of the head was I was getting shots just Thursday, and it was hot here, like hot. And with the Eclipse, not even like talking about I just got a piece of it and it bent back and it went in. And I love STX. I'm not trashing them or anything, but on a hot day, you could make the cleanest save in the world right in the pocket, and it still feels odd because it's so hot, and you can feel the difference in your head's durability. right? And where that gets difficult is when you make if you stop a hard shot right in the pocket and you want to just like kind of one pop it and cradle an outlet, the feeling is different there because the head is so soft. And then also with my Eclipse too, if it's really hot out on outlets, like they will go higher because the head will be so flimsy, it'll lean back. And but when I was out with this head and it was like pushing, I'm not going to do the conversion to Fahrenheit, but it was like 30 plus degrees Celsius. Like I was getting shots right in the pocket and there was no difference in feeling. Throwing outlets, no difference in feeling. So I was really impressed with the heat durability. As far as the warping goes, there may be some warping out there, but just I treat my stick like it's like my third arm. So just a PSA to all you goalies out there, don't leave your sticks in hot cars. Don't leave your sticks underneath your gear bags, right, for a week when you're not going out and getting shots. And, you might not see warping. Absolutely. They probably warp here and there, but, it starts with taking care of your stick.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even like really think about, because when I was younger, I would just leave my sticks in my car or like leave them in the garage. Yeah, like I realizing now that I'm not really experiencing it, and it's definitely, I'm the same way where like if it's in my trunk, like I make sure even if I'm in a rush to get inside, I'll grab it out of my trunk and I leave it in an air conditioned room, just because that's like what I did in college. It was so important to me in college. Like I would never leave a stick in a really hot spot or a really cold spot, because if you leave it in your garage and it's really cold in the winter, like it might break the next time you use it. So yeah, definitely a big piece. And also too, like if you're a guy who puts a gear on the top of your stick, when you get home, take it off, because that used to warp. Even my Nemesis one, back in the day, I would just leave my gear hanging on top, and then if you leave it out like that for days, all of a sudden the head might start pushing around because of the weight. So definitely a good point. I didn't even think about that.
PSA to all the goalies out there: take care of your sticks. It's very important. So the last piece that I wanted to touch on was the impact mesh. Now, along with the head, East Coast Dyes also released this impact mesh in semi-hard and semi-soft styles here. And this is kind of the first new mesh that we've seen in a long time from any lacrosse brand too. So what were your guys' thoughts around the mesh? What have you liked about it so far? What have you not liked about it? What are kind of the key pieces that stand out to you with it? Maybe Simon, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So Drake, did you have any hand in like making the mesh?
Yeah, this was like probably where I was. This is probably where I was like most involved.
I would like to hear. Mesh, yeah. I'd like to hear what you have to say first, because I'm really curious.
So when I first went in, I basically said to them like, "Hey, they were trying to have me use it and just like my sticks in summer league and when I was playing last summer, and I was like, hey, like, I never really used your mesh before, and I really don't like it. I tried it in college. I didn't like it. I didn't use it, and I don't like it right now. And I don't think I'm like, throwing balls away in men's league because your guys' mesh." And they were like, really honestly, like excited to hear that, because I think they like appreciated the honesty. And they basically brought me in and they were like, okay, well, what can we change? What are the problems? What are you seeing? What do you not like about it? And I remember me and Brett Dobson were using with the original version of this at a Goalie Smith session. And we kept noticing every few passes would just go right down into the dirt. You get 3 dimes and then the third one catches a diamond and falls down. And goes like straight into the ground. So we were telling them that. And then, a lot of it was, how do we have a mesh that, works in well? So it's not just good the first time you use it when you're just throwing around, but like, when you've got a goalie stick, you're literally getting it pounded by 90-mile-per-hour shots. How does it hold up 2 weeks later? Which was my issue with a lot of pieces of mesh in college, was it might throw well like at first, and then if it wasn't durable, 2 weeks later, it would either be ripping or it would just completely bag out. So that was a big priority as well, was how does it work? Not only how is it out of the box, like is it usable out of the box, but how does it work in when you've kind of stress tested it? So that was a big piece. So they made the diamonds up here a little bit smaller. And then the big piece was, how do we make it thick enough so it doesn't tear, durable, and then keep it pretty light. And I basically really wanted, what I was telling them was you guys need to sort of, your mesh has all kind of felt the same. And if you're trying to do this, you might want to make this one feel a little bit different so that every goalie kind of has an opportunity to look at what they want. And they worked, with me. They tried out a bunch of different pieces. And then we found one that, I really, really liked. And then a few other guys tried it and, really liked it. And I think the big piece was, how well does it work in, again, like I said, and, having played in training camp and then down in Alabama, seeing a ton of shots, like it ended up at a spot where I felt like it had really, really good rebound control, and it was like soft enough to control rebounds, but it wasn't just completely, like getting worked and then, ripping. It's held up really well. So definitely something that I had a big hand in. So I'm definitely biased, but I've really enjoyed using it so far.
Yeah, right on. So I found that right off the bat, it came out of the package stringable, right? There's some mesh that you have to go to like actual war with before you can put in the head, because like like you'll string a stick and it's an absolute guitar because the mesh is unable to stretch to fit the face shape. So I found that it came out of the box like pretty malleable, and I was able to, almost get it to the pocket and channel that I wanted out of the box. I also find that the rebound control is really good. The ball doesn't get tangled up, right? When you see a really hard shot and it kind of swirls itself in there, that doesn't happen with this mesh. What I'm also really impressed with, and like me and Drake said, he likes the tight channel, I like the more open channel, is like, that just sits there, right? Like that's like pretty hard to the touch. Whereas like other mesh, like, softer meshes like the Mesh Dynasty and the Grizzly 2 stuff, if I was holding the stick like this, it would start to sink in on itself. So I was really impressed with, like, I guess like a term for this is like memory foam. Like it really holds its channel in its pocket well. And then as far as the break-in goes, because it comes out of the box like almost ready to go, I only needed 2 sessions out there, and then it completely bagged out. I restrung it a little bit, tweaked some things, and now it's like good to go. And then I don't know about this, Drake. This might just be the nostalgia talking for me, but is there a hint of wax on it? I feel like it's got a little something on it.
Yeah, I don't think there actually is, but you can definitely like feel it. I think that, I don't know if they like put wax on there, but I know they used a different material than the Hero stuff. So maybe it's got a hint of the OG wax, which I don't think they sell anymore. But
yeah, that stuff was great. And it's weather resistant. It's I find it's great in the water. And yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to touch on with it.
Okay, awesome. So we're kind of coming to the end of this year, and I wanted to maybe get your guys's sort of final thoughts on this head, as well as who would you recommend use this type of goalie head, or who would you recommend this to?
I think the last thing I thought was cool is just like the small customizable pieces. So like you said, when you order it online, like they gave me the red strings before I went down to play with Canada, and the red throat. I always thought that was like a really cool touch. And just overall, I would say I'd recommend this to, basically anyone, but probably like a higher level sort of high school goalie, before you get stuck in your ways with whatever you're using. If you're, kind of high level JV or varsity, I think it would be the perfect head. Just because when you get to that level, you need that extra kind of stiffness, to avoid extra shots going in. And if you get used to it, then you might want to be able to continue to use it through college, where stiffness is key and really important. So that would be my main recommendation there.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of echo that. I think anybody can use this head, right? It's light enough that a young kid can use it, and it's stiff enough for older, higher level kids that the shots aren't bending the head backwards. That being said, it is the top of the line head right now, and it does go for a little bit more money. So if you are a parent, a lacrosse parent of a young kid, don't feel stressed to necessarily buy them the top of the line gear, because I think that, you know, at the youth level, any goalie head is durable enough. But absolutely, I think that this head, it has the potential to be a game changer for elite goalies at the elite level. And then one more thing that I want to touch on is, you know, I've strung hundreds of heads. I've used just about every head on the market. I've used just about every mesh on the market. And, you know, it's been this constant sort of mix and match game, right? You know, Eclipse head with string king mesh, Warrior head with hero mesh, right? And I was absolutely fired up that ECD, you know, took the time to release a head and mesh that go together. So that's what I was most stoked about this release.
Yeah, and to touch on price point, this comes in at $110 for the head itself, and then the stringing kits. You can buy the kits for the ECD Impact with strings for $52.99. If you just want straight mesh, it comes in at $40. I did want to give a shout out to Lacrosse Monkey for helping out with this video and providing us with this head here to review. You know, it comes in at that upper echelon of goalie heads, but that's what it was built for. The mesh, it's coming in at that higher range, and it's quite expensive, but at the same time, that's kind of what you're starting to see new heads and mesh in particular, like coming in at that price point anyways. It's kind of comes with the trade as you go up in those levels. So yeah, any other final thoughts on this head, guys? No. Awesome. Well, there you have it. Try out the new ECD Impact head. It's brand new from East Coast Dyes. It's been a pleasure to check out this video. Drake, Simon, do you guys have anything you'd like to plug for your respective companies?
You can follow Goalie Smith on Instagram, Twitter, and
yeah, I mean, follow Stand Tall Goaltending on Instagram. If you live in the Southern Ontario or Western New York region, don't be shy. Shoot me a DM if you want to, you know, get some reps in, get some training in. I run all my training in the Southern Ontario region, and you know, don't be shy if you have any other questions, right? Just hit me up on Instagram. I'm happy to answer any sort of goalie related questions that you might have.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Give her a try. East Coast Dyes Impact.